Hello and welcome to another video covering basic Fusion 360 ideas. This video is going to be very brief. We're going to look at the fillet and chamfer tools that allow us to change the way an edge of a shape looks. We can round an edge or flatten an edge with these two different tools. And these are very quick and easy ways to make a very plain, sharp-edged item look rounded and smooth and modern. So I'm on my home view. I'm going to create a very simple sketch. I'm going to make a new sketch, pick the XZ plane just so it's top down. I'm just going to make a rectangle that's centered on the origin. And to save myself some work, instead of doing a 2-point rectangle, I'm going to choose a center point rectangle. So that way I can coincident with the origin. So I have my center point rectangle. I'm going to click the origin. And notice how it kind of makes this by default the thing, and I'm going to choose, let's do 60 by 60, so it's a square. And there it is. And notice that it kind of automatically made some construction lines for us, which is very convenient. I'm going to go ahead and finish the sketch. I'm going to extrude this out upward to 60 millimeters. So it's a perfect cube that is 60 by 60 by 60. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a I want to fillet the edges. So I'm going to pick one edge so we can see what a fillet is. A fillet is a manipulation of the 3D object, an edge, which is a line that connects or is one part of a face. In the Modify menu near the top here, we have the list of many different things that we can do on 3D objects. The first one, which has its own shortcut, F, is the fillet tool. And if we see the little description, it says adds fillets or rounds one or more edges. So we can actually select multiple edges. I'm going to choose one first and then try it, see what it looks like, and then we can maybe add more. So I'm going to click it. I had the edge already selected, so you'll notice that it's already there, but I can always click another one and I can unclick them if I want to see fit. And as I click edges, notice they show up on the right side, and then it says, well, how much do you want to fillet this edge? So let's go ahead and type in a number. Let's put 2 millimeters. And you can see immediately it gives us a visual feedback that it is rounded. It took a sharp edge and made it round. Now notice the other edges are flat, and so we have to ask ourselves, what's going to happen if we fillet two edges? How do they connect with each other, and what happens to that corner as we do that? So let's go ahead and cancel and try it one more time. I'm going to do Modify, Fillet, but this time I'm going to select two edges at the same time, and let's go ahead and put it at 2 millimeters. Now you can see that what it did is it rounded both sides, but down the middle, it's a sharp edge, but it is a rounded sharp edge. You can see that kind of hook there as we look at it. So that's what it looks like when only two edges are selected. And we can play with this as much as we want. We can always add fillets to more. Right now, this is a 2 millimeter fillet. The corner type is what changes. So rolling balls when all three corners are selected, or all three edges that point to a corner are selected. Right now, there's only two. So let's try doing this and see what it looks like. So Modify, Fillet, and I'll just pick 1, 2, 3. And so because all three of these lines are connected, this edge is going to have a certain particular behavior. And so right now, the default is rolling ball. If I click OK, and I'm going to go ahead and put 2 millimeters, you can see that that corner is a nice round corner. And the result is kind of like a triangle that's curved, and that's our corner. Now, if we switch it to a setback corner type, it's similar, still round. In fact, it looks a little bit more rounded, but what it is that the edges have a flat cutoff point, and then the corner is its own shape. It's its own feature that has kind of like a Y shape to it. So if that's what we want, then we can have that, but we have to recognize there's different styles, and it's really a matter of what you prefer. There's no right way. It's whatever you think looks best. So rolling ball is the typical one. You have more of the original edge available to use, so that the feature in the middle is a much smaller and simpler feature. That's the only real difference that we want to play with, right? So I'm going to cancel. I'm going to do one last thing, and let's go ahead and fillet just the top 4 lines. So Modify, Fillet, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 edges selected, and let's go ahead and put them at 4 millimeters apiece. So they're pretty round. And again, since these side edges were not filleted, they all have like a sharp round edge, and I'm okay with that, so I'm going to click OK. And so that's a fillet. A fillet is very simple. It's just a nice, easy way to do this. Now, because these are outward-facing edges, the curve goes, you know, around it. If we had like a divot, we could also make it look inward. It's the same idea. Really, we can kind of play with this in a lot of ways and make things look nice. So on the bottom of our cube, let's go ahead and do a chamfer and see what the difference is visually. So chamfer is just like fillet, but right underneath it. It doesn't have its own keyboard shortcut, unfortunately. And basically, it's the same thing, but it bevels an edge, which means that it makes it kind of flat. So a sharp edge is made into like another surface. And the angle is based on how many millimeters we choose to have our chamfer. So I'm going to select chamfer, and I'm going to choose the bottom 4 edges. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so those bottom 4 are selected, and now let's go ahead and put something like 4 millimeters as the other one. And you can see, there it is. And so really the only difference is if you look at the actual edge, it's a straight line as opposed to an arc. That's the primary difference here. And so this gives us a nice sharp beveled edge, and so if you want that, that's a good choice. Chamfers are also really useful for things like that. So we're going to go and click OK, and there it is. Now what I want to do is I'm going to cut a hole in the middle of this cube so we can see what the fillet and chamfer look like on a circular opening. Because right now these are straight edges, but how about on circular edges like a hole? So let's go ahead and choose, I'm going to put myself in the home view. I'm going to go ahead and make a new sketch on this top face. So I'm going to select it. It's going to be blue. I'm going to create a new sketch. I'm going to use the circle tool. I'm going to put it right in the center. And let's go ahead and put it at 20 millimeters. So I'll dimension it. So a 20 millimeter diameter. And there it is, fully constrained. I'm going to click Finish Sketch. And then now I'm going to extrude and cut this hole out. So I'm going to click this feature. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit and then change extent from distance to all. And it'll cut all the way down through. And we can see now that I have this hole all the way through. Right? And then now let's go ahead and choose this top edge. So I have that top ring selected. And let's choose chamfer. And chamfer also has a button at the top. Fillet also has a button at the top. We can click any of those or hit the F on the keyboard. And let's go ahead and put it at 3 millimeters. And then click OK. And notice what happens is we have a nice round internal edge. The opening is smooth. And this is very useful for if you think about how things are inserted. For example, a rod might have to slide into this hole to connect two items. And if there were flat, sharp edges, they wouldn't. If you didn't have it perfectly aligned, it might be a little bit too snug. With this round edge, it allows for humans kind of error to kind of, you can push it against the rounded part and then slide it in a much more easy fashion. So fillets and chamfers are helpful for that kind of friendly use of a person because we're not perfect and we can't necessarily align things perfectly without edges. So if sharp edges got caught on each other, it might be hard to insert something. So a fillet makes that easy. Let's look at the bottom side and do the same thing. So I'm going to choose this bottom edge, but instead of a fillet, I'm going to use a chamfer. So modify, chamfer. And let's go and do the same thing, 3 millimeters. So it's the exact same idea, but this one is kind of a sharp divot, so it is kind of like a nice opening. And the same thing, it's steeper, but it allows it so that if we want to insert something into this hole, it's much easier to connect and grab. And so there it is. The result is that the top is nice and rounded edges, the bottom is nice sharp edges of the chamfers, and whatever we prefer, we can use this on any edge. And so we could, for example, choose all 4 of these corners. I'm going to hold Shift as I select them, so there should be 4 selected lines. Right, so 1, 2, 3, 4 blue lines. And now if I do fillet, I can also round those, and let's go ahead and put those at, let's say, 5 millimeters. And the result is now that the tops are nice and round. You can see the feature of the corners because there's a third one that's round. On the bottom, it's a little bit more interesting because the bottom edge, this corner, is kind of the blending of chamfers and fillets. And you can see that it's not beautiful. It tried to make it round, but it also wanted to keep the sharp, flat edges of the chamfers, and the result is that kind of weird kind of curve on the ends. But it's not terrible. It's another approach. You can decide if that looks good to you. Right, so there it is. So those are pretty simple tools. And so in our next video, we'll talk about some of the other modify tools.